Today we are talking about why the right information can bring you last waiting freedom. How many times did you lose weight and gain it back? Have you ever stopped wondering why so many intelligent, determined, and hardworking women spend years from one weight loss method to the next, investing thousands of dollars, countless hours, and an unbelievable amount of emotional energy, and yet somehow end up exactly where they started, or sometimes even in a worse place than before? I certainly have. I have heard the same stories thousands of times over the years from women. After working with so many overweight women for more than 4 decades, I think that this is the single most important first question we should ask ourselves before going to the next diet or plan. Because if we don't understand why this keeps happening, we are almost guaranteed to keep repeating the same painful cycle over and over again. Most people assume that these women simply haven't found the right diet yet. They're friendly. But if they're not, they assume that they haven't discovered or that they simply don't have enough willpower or discipline. But I don't believe any of those things are the real problem. I yet have to meet the woman who lost weight with a diet long term and kept it off for at least 10 years. Because only if weight lasts that long, at least, you can talk about real weight loss. The real problem is that you have been handed the wrong information for so long that it has become almost impossible to recognize it as wrong. It has literally been burned into your brain. Fact is, the diet approach is insanely outdated science. It's too simplistic to make any sense. Just imagine for a moment that you have lived your entire life in a town where everybody believes that north is south and south is north. Every map you have ever been given points in the wrong direction. Every teacher has repeated exactly the same thing, and every traveler you meet confidently tells you to follow the same road because that is what everybody has always done. If you kept getting lost year after year, would it really make sense to conclude that you simply weren't trying hard enough? Of course not. At some point, you would begin questioning the map, not yourself. And that is exactly what I would love to invite you to do today. Question the map. Because the greatest obstacle to lasting weight freedom is not the lack of motivation, discipline, or willpower. If you have tried several diets and plans, you definitely lack motivation, discipline, or willpower. It is the fact that most women have spent years trying to solve the problem with the wrong information. The tragedy is that when the information doesn't work, information is rarely questioned. Instead, the woman questions herself. She is told that she didn't stick to the plan long enough, that she lacked commitment, that she wasn't disciplined enough, that she gave in to temptation, whereas it was just plain hunger. And after hearing that message often enough, she eventually begins believing that she must be the problem. When you're being told that you're stupid for 10 years, 20 years every day, you eventually begin to believe it, even if you have very high IQ. It's how to talk people into believing something by repeating it often enough. Can you see how cruel that is? Because once you understand that the information itself was fundamentally flawed, you automatically begin to understand that millions of women have been blaming themselves for something that was never their fault in the first place, including yourself. That is why I believe one of the most courageous things you can ever do is not to search for another diet. Instead, it's to begin asking whether the information you have been following actually deserves your trust. I started my coaching career in 1984, and since then I have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of women who lost weight with a diet, becoming the next weight loss coach, teaching others the same flawed information they had fallen for, and a few years later they were disappeared and were never seen again because they have gained the lost weight back and they didn't have to offer any better answers. And if they would continue, they had to admit that they had no idea why their and their clients' weight came back after a while. And who wants to publicly admit that they were wrong? Thanks to my own weight gain after 14 years of being slim without dieting, I kept searching for answers. And over the years, I have found 4 simple questions that help me distinguish information that leads toward weight freedom from information that keeps people trapped. And the first question is always the same. Is this based on the laws of nature? Nature is wonderfully honest. Nature doesn't cheat. Nature doesn't try to take detours, doesn't try to shorten the path. It never negotiates, simply follows the plan strictly without questioning. It never bends because something has become fashion. It never changes because a new bestseller has appeared on the market. Your body has been following the same natural laws since the day you were conceived, and it will continue following those laws long after the last diet trend has disappeared. Strictly, straight, just obediently follow the laws of nature and its blueprint. If somebody tells you that starving your body, depriving it of what it genuinely needs, or constantly fighting against its natural signals is the road to health and lasting weight loss, then I would encourage you to ask yourself one very simple question. Would nature really work that way? Does it make sense that my body's hunger signals should be ignored? Because nature has been designed to always protect life, including yours. And it does that very adamantly, very determined. Your body is not trying to make your life difficult, it's trying to keep you alive through thick and thin, verbally, during all those weight loss attempts. And the moment you begin working with that reality instead of against it, something begins changing that no amount of willpower could ever accomplish. The second question naturally follows the first. Does this information deal with the cause or does it only deal with the symptom? Picture somebody standing in a beautiful garden with a pair of scissors, carefully cutting every weed until the soil looks perfectly clean again. For a few days, everything looks wonderful and clean. The garden appears transformed. You proudly look at your work and think the problem has finally been solved. And then, a week or two later, the weeds begin appearing at exactly where they were before. Would anybody be surprised or question the scissors or the person who who cut the weeds? Of course not, because everybody understands that cutting weeds is not the same as removing their roots. And yet this is exactly what happens in the weight loss world every single day, every single minute. We keep cutting the visible part of the problem while quietly leaving the roots untouched. And then we are surprised when the weight returns. The third question is one that even fewer people ever ask. How quickly does life become easier? Notice that I didn't ask how quickly the weight comes off. I asked how quickly your life begins feeling different. Because if a method is truly working with your body instead of fighting against it, you should gradually begin feeling more peaceful, more hopeful, and more confident as the weeks go by. And as soon as you understand that, you also get why that inner healing process takes time. You shouldn't feel as though every day is another battle against yourself. Battles create adversity, and you shouldn't feel that every meal is a test of your character. You shouldn't live in constant fear of making one mistake that destroys everything you have worked for. Real progress doesn't remove every challenge, just pivots, but it slowly replaces struggle with understanding. And finally, there is one question that may be the most revealing of all. How do you feel while you are following such information or a plan or a diet? If every day is filled with guilt, fear, pressure, and the constant feeling that you are doing something wrong, then I would seriously question whether that information deserves a place in your life or not. Because imagine for a moment that you are walking through a beautiful forest with a guide who knows the way home. As you walk together, you will naturally begin feeling calmer because every step brings you closer to your destination because you can trust the guide. You don't spend the entire journey wondering whether you have taken the wrong path, whether you have been doing something wrong, whether you had enough discipline to follow the path because you trust the direction you are traveling. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine walking through the same forest with somebody who keeps changing direction every few minutes, who constantly tells you that you have failed, who blames you every time the path disappears beneath your feet, and who insists that if you were only trying harder, you would somehow magically find your way. Would you feel safe? Would you feel hopeful? Or would you slowly begin doubting yourself? That is exactly what false information does. It doesn't simply confuse your mind, it steals your confidence in yourself. It teaches you to distrust your own body and yourself. It convinces you that your natural signals, body signals, are enemies instead of the body's messages. And after enough years, you begin believing that the only answer is to keep searching for another diet or another quick fix, another injection that makes you sick, or another surgery. For many years, you may have believed that you were making choices. Every time you started another diet, bought another weight loss book, signed up for another fitness program, or decided to try the latest miracle solution that promised to change your life. But were those really choices, or were they simply different versions of the same answer? Imagine somebody takes you into a room with 10 different doors and constantly tells you that one of them leads you to freedom. You carefully choose one door, only to discover that it leads back into the very same room. The next day you choose another door, convinced that this time it will be different, only to find yourself back in exactly the same place. And all the time you believe that you are making choices, when in reality you are simply walking through repetitively the same doors which just look differently from the outside, inside into the same prison. I believe that is exactly what has happened to millions of women. As long as all the information you receive is built on the same misunderstanding, the same very simplified eat less, move more paradigm, that your body simply needs less food, more exercise, and more willpower, you don't really have a choice at all. You are merely choosing between different diets, different doors, different calorie plans, different exercise programs, or different quick fixes that all begin with the same false assumption. Even injections, they just make you less hungry so that you eat less. There is no difference whatsoever in any diet or any program. And the same with the gastric surgeries. They just force you to eat less. And then everything changes the moment truthful information enters your life. Suddenly you discover that there is another door, one you didn't even know existed because nobody had ever shown it to you before. Now, for the very first time, you have a genuine choice. You can continue walking the familiar path if you believe it's right for you, or you can choose a completely different direction based on a deeper understanding of your body, your nervous system, your emotions, and the natural laws that govern lasting change. The important thing is that for the first time, you are choosing freely instead of simply repeating what you have been told. That is why the right information is so precious. It doesn't force you to change your life. It simply gives you a kind of freedom you didn't have before. The freedom to make an informed choice instead of remaining trapped inside somebody else's misunderstanding, because those are not real choices. They only seem to make sense as much as it made sense to our ancestors that the sun was circling around the planet and that the earth was flat. They were totally convinced for hundreds of years because they had physical evidence. That information made total sense back then because of the evidence. And those outdated choices are simply different roads leading around the same roundabout. A real choice only appears when the truth enters your life. Our ancestors first had to come up with enough courage to walk towards the horizon in order to realize that there is no abyss and that the horizon was constantly moving forward in front of their eyes. It never ended. Truth now places another map into your hands. It says you don't have to keep walking in circles anymore. If you want to continue on the old road, then that is your decision, and I will respect it completely. If you have been wondering whether there is another way, I simply want you to know there is. Can you feel the difference? Nobody is forcing you. Nobody is threatening you. Nobody is making you feel guilty. You are simply free to either continue where you are or to explore another path. Free to learn and free to question. Free to decide what is right for your own life. And that is why I believe the right information is one of the greatest gifts you can ever receive, because it doesn't control you, pressure you, or frighten you into obedience. Instead, it quietly opens a door that you may never have known exists and invites you to step through it whenever you are ready. I have always loved the words, "the truth will set you free," because freedom is one of my biggest values. The freedom cannot replace by anything. And because after all these years, I have come to understand that they apply just as much to weight freedom as they do to every other areas of life. Because the truth doesn't simply help you lose weight. It frees you from confusion, from unnecessary guilt, from endless searching, and from believing that you are somehow broken. It allows you to stop fighting your body and begin understanding it, to stop chasing one false promise after another, and finally walk a path that is in harmony with the way you were designed and your body is designed, in harmony with the natural laws. And perhaps that is the most beautiful kind of freedom there is, because it's not just the freedom from carrying extra weight. It's the freedom of no longer carrying the false beliefs that kept you trapped for so many years. It was those beliefs which made your life so hard. From that place, lasting weight freedom is no longer something you desperately chase. It becomes the natural destination of someone who is finally walking into the right direction.